Today we are doing another Q&A. I am looking forward to these questions. I kind of looked over them and wow, you guys have some good questions. And yeah, first, thank you for trusting me to speak into your life in this way. And you can take my opinion and my thoughts or leave it, or hopefully maybe they confirm or give you some new ideas. But I have a ton of questions. We're going to see how far we get. In light of having a ton of questions, I am going to do another Q&A in just a couple of weeks. I was like, okay, we'll do it once a month, but I have so many that we're going to do two this month because I do want to catch up because you do have questions and some of these are a little bit, there's like a time frame on them and you like to get some answers sooner rather than later. So if I don't get to your question today, I will get to it later this month, which means we're going to need brand new questions for next month. Check out the link in the show notes in order to submit your question for the Q&A. It can be done completely anonymously, and I look forward to going through those. But today, let's answer a few more questions. Welcome to Little by Little Homeschool Podcast, where we talk anything and everything homeschool and all that encompasses the homeschool lifestyle. I'm your host, Leigh Nguyen. I'm a mom who never intended to homeschool, and suddenly I am here, 14 years later, with 2 homeschool graduates and 1 more to go. No matter where you are in your homeschool journey, Little by Little Homeschool seeks to empower and encourage you to carry out this amazing calling of home educating and discipling your children. It's not always easy, but I'm here to walk alongside you because I promise that these years are worth all of your effort. Grab that load of laundry that needs folded, settle in at the kitchen sink to wash those dishes, or tie up those walking sneakers, and let's get into today's topic. The first mom's question says, I started a homeschool group a few years ago that meets weekly. I plan field trips to weekly themes and lessons. Overall, we have a great group of parents and kids. I'm struggling a lot with one family almost weekly. One family's kids' behavior I find isn't age appropriate. They're hitting, kicking, shoving, and we have kids getting hurt weekly by one. They trash the place and damage other people's property. At most, the mom may ask them to apologize. I've nicely tried talking to the mom several times about it. She jumps to getting offended, then takes nothing from it. The mom is very nice, but I'm really struggling with how to handle this. Why do you feel like I'm being mean or holding such high expectations? We definitely have differences on age-appropriate behavior at meetups. This is a hard one. And I'm going to flat out tell you, this was always, it was a tough one. And your question, no offense, please don't take any offense, but it makes me so glad my kids are older. I don't have to deal with this anymore. So that's kind of a blessing. Just know as your kids get older, sometimes they're like, oh no. But some of these hard things aren't the hard things that we are having to work through. So this is hard. It sounds like this group is something that you have set it up, and I'm not sure if it's by invite or not, but it's hard when we have different parenting philosophies and different expectations for our kids. It can be hard, but it's harder when those philosophies or those expectations are farther removed than if they're similar. You could have friends where maybe you have mostly a similar approach, but then there's some things that are different and you're like, okay, just need to give a little bit of grace, and they give a little bit of grace to us for that. But when it's something big, and when this child is now physically hurting other children, that's a line that has to be drawn. That's not appropriate at all. I'm going to assume that this child can control themselves. And so therefore, if it is a child that has difficulty controlling themselves, then the mom needs to be with them at all times. When we have kids that need their parents around to kind of be able to function well and to treat others well, then parents need to be. So not to this extent and not to this extreme, but I have had kids where I was like, okay, either myself or my husband volunteers for this thing that they are participating in because it's best for us to be able to channel their energy and to remind them of what they are, how they're supposed to act and their behavior, what that's supposed to be, like, but it just sounds like the mom is removed and doesn't really kind of care. I would say that probably what you need to do, as the Bible says, I don't know if this is a Christian group. I don't know if she's a Bible believer or anything. It makes it easier if she is, because she should be able to then take a conversation well. If she's not, then she might absolutely become offended. But it doesn't mean that just because she goes to your church, she's going to take this well. But as the Bible instructs us, I would go and speak to her one-on-one. I would do this at a time where there are no kids around, where there isn't going to be an interruption and there isn't going to be a distraction. And I would more so focus on the fact that this child is hitting, kicking, shoving, kids are getting hurt, that this child is damaging other people's property, and just say, this behavior can't go on. You might have to actually take a strong stance and say, this behavior is not tolerated. And if you want to continue attending, you're going to need to do something about this behavior. You either need to be with the child all the time, or I'm sorry, but they're not going to be able to participate. We have to look at overall all of the children that are there. And if there is one that is, this isn't just like slightly the kid's just being maybe a little obnoxious and he's immature or anything like that. That was more so the case with my kids. At times it wasn't a physical behavior. It was just like, okay, we just need to not say everything that pops into our mind. So therefore, we're going to attend this with you and kind of be a little bit of your conscience by your side. But this is too far. I'm just going to flat out say it's too far. And I'm sure the mom is very nice. And she might be struggling. If this is going on somewhere in public, I can't imagine what is necessarily going on at home. And this might be a wake-up call. This might be what she needs to say, okay, we need to work on discipline and heart issues and character development. And it's not easy to hear that from somebody else, but I would approach her one-on-one. I would do so in a humble manner. I would do so in prayer. Have your husband pray. If you have other friends, maybe you're close with your mom or whoever else, they might not even have to know this other mom. It might even be better if they don't know this other mom, and just say, can you pray? I'm at this specific time going to meet up with her, and give me the words to say. And so approach it with a humble attitude and with grace and with kindness and love. Next question is, how do you decide what projects, artwork, schoolwork, etc. to keep? I'm sentimental when it comes to things like that, but I am also a minimalist and hate having a ton of stuff in storage. What's your criteria for what to keep and your system for storing stuff? Well, let's just say that we have moved 2 times, like significant moves, and that actually really focused, it forced me to be more strategic with what we would keep. And so when we started homeschooling, I was like, well, I have to keep everything that they did. I have to keep this math workbook that they've gone through, and I got to keep that. And I started thinking like, well, wait a minute, the school just throws away those things afterwards. I don't necessarily have to. And in both my states, there would be final paperwork to send in. So I would wait for that final paperwork to come back from the school district saying that your year has been approved. Like if my year has been approved, then I have the paperwork to show that I do not need to keep all of this consumable stuff. So when it comes to the schoolwork, I would not keep very much. Maybe writing projects, if maybe they are at the point where they're writing a whole paragraph and there's a picture drawn with it, I would keep some of those because I just wanted to remember their fun stories. And then on the other side of that, I did do an episode about what to keep, and I will link that in the show notes. But on the other side of that, with high school, I would keep pretty much all of their schoolwork until I got the final paperwork at the end of their high school time, just in case, just so that I could prove, even though I would get approval as the years would go by, I would keep it all for them. But the artwork, that's the thing that kind of gets me. I still have some of their artwork. Actually, in our half bathroom, laundry room area, I have hanging in there. All 3 of them went to the same preschool when they were 3, so like the 3-year-old program. And in that year, the teacher, they had the same teacher each year, and she would have them draw a self-portrait. And so I have hanging in there from when they were through. So listen, I have a 23, almost 21-year-old and a 17-year-old. And hanging up, I have framed their 3-year-old self-portraits. So stinking cute. Love it. And I'm glad that I kept those. But there was a lot of things that I didn't keep. Now, you might have kids like I did where there was constant drawings on everything and so many like, oh, look at this project I made. And sometimes you just have to be like, I can't keep everything. But take a look and decide you're going to keep some things and just have one place to keep them. And so I kind of ended up with just like a folder just with my school stuff. I have like a standing up kind of file sort of system. It's like wood. I found it at I don't know, consignment sale or thrift store or something like that. And so I would just keep it at that. I also do have a probably handful of like clay projects that they did in art, and they are in a cabinet, a hutch that I have in my dining room. Can't really see them anymore, but they were just so much fun. And I don't know, for just some of those things just really were more sentimental. So maybe just kind of look at it and also think of it as, well, I'll keep this for a few years. And then maybe in a few years, you might say, yeah, you know what? This isn't as sentimental as I thought it was. They've made 50 of the same exact thing. And so maybe you just want to keep one or none. So it really is hard. And I remember my parents keeping a lot of things. And then I moved out, got married and moved out. And they're like, here's all your stuff. And I was like, I don't really care about the picture that I drew in kindergarten. When they weren't looking, I just kind of tossed a lot of it. I did keep a couple of things, but not really very much. But I'm a pretty sentimental person. But you and I sound alike. Sentimental, but also a minimalist. I don't want to have tons and tons of tubs and crates and all these things full of the stuff. So the criteria is like, what are some of the things that we created memories around? And I would keep that stuff. Third question is, first she starts off with this amazing story. And she said that she had started homeschooling. The first year was super easy. Started year 2, and she's like, oh, this is going to be easy. It's going to be great. And she was just at a point very early in the second homeschool year where she just was like, I can't do this. I'm going to enroll him in public school tomorrow. And so she was like, she felt like, you know what? I'm going to search for a homeschool podcast. And guess what came up? Little by Little Homeschool. And so it just brought tears to my eyes the very first time I read this. She said that my podcast, Little by Little Homeschool, came up. And she said, long story short, here I am starting year 5 with a complete change in my thinking and a whole new homeschool life. She's happier and less stressed, and her children are happier, and her home is a more peaceful place now. Praise the Lord. I love that. I love it. I just got chills. I hope you did too. So her question is that she's all prepped, and she had her curriculum purchased for her kids. She had a start date planned, her goals, her vision written out. She's ready for year 5. And then a week before that, her daughter fell and broke her main writing arm. So maybe she's a righty or a lefty, and she broke it in several spots. So it sounds like a pretty bad break. So between doctor visits and helping her just with everyday basic things, so she probably can't brush her teeth. She can't do all of these things. She's realizing that all of the things that she had planned for the fall season and education is going to look very different. So she's asking, do you have any advice on how to tweak plans and curriculum to adjust for her needs while still maintaining a certain level of homeschool for the other 2 children? Yes, just know that there are seasons where you're going to feel like I'm not getting to all the things that I need because we have this hurdle. So for some of us, it could be maybe it is a sickness. For you, it is an injury. It could be an injury. Maybe dad has an injury. Dad's laid off of work, or there is some type of illness with a parent that you're taking care of, or a family member, or something, car accident, something that has come up. This is a part of life. That is just common in life. There's always going to possibly be something, just different levels of things. And this can probably feel really overwhelming. And I really hope that she is no longer in pain and that her healing is complete really soon and she's able to then get her strength back in her arm. So when it comes to adjusting, we just kind of have to lower our expectations a little bit. It sounds like you have been able to do that, just to kind of adjust overall with a story that I was reading from her earlier. And just having a peaceful home, focus on that. So when it comes down to the day, it might just be that you're spending a lot of time having to help your daughter. Well, maybe with your other 2 kids, just focus on getting them their math lessons or having them just do some math review, and you guys doing some language arts and or at least reading to everybody. So I don't know how old each of your kids are or anything. If they're reading, they could be reading on their own. They could be reading to each other. So I think a lot of it comes down to just us adjusting our expectations. So you had all these ideas on what you wanted to do this fall, and it's not all going to happen. Let's just push them back just a little bit. Is she able to function just overall, and you guys can just do some fun outdoor sort of stuff instead, and just to really enjoy the fall and make the most and the best of this? Just know that in a few years, this will be a long, distant memory, and your kids, they will not be behind. There will be no long-term scars unless she maybe has a scar on her arm from breaking it. But there's not going to be any type of emotional or educational scars or anything that they are going to have to get over. Everybody will be good. Enjoy your fall and just do what you have to do in order to help her to get back to a place of full recovery. Next question is, any tips for kids that resist handwriting practice? Yeah, not all kids are going to like handwriting. And I think I had two that didn't really like handwriting. I'll let you guess which two. Yes, it was my boys. My daughter loved it. She couldn't wait to learn how to do cursive and she can now do calligraphy and just loves all that kind of stuff. And the boys, they can write. And I'm like, oh, okay, I think I can read your handwriting, sort of. That's a whole other story. But you have a kiddo that is resisting handwriting practice. So let me tell you the curriculum that I used when we actually did do handwriting practice, and that is handwriting without tears. I didn't purchase the whole system or anything. I literally just purchased the workbook, and I think there's a lesson book that goes along with it. I didn't get it. We were on such a tight budget that all I could afford was the workbook. And, you could see, like, this is how they tell you to do a lowercase a and a lowercase b, and you could just follow those arrows. And so I just made up the lesson on my own just by looking at the worksheet. But if they're resistant to learning how to write, it's okay. I promise that they won't go their entire life without writing. They will. So there are some really great other options. I would maybe get onto Pinterest and stuff and see if you can maybe find something that'll give you more ideas. But you could have them just practice writing different letters. I mean, they might not even be ready for it. They might not be ready to hold a pen or a pencil. Think about, for little kids, they give them the chunky crayons. They give them the chunky pencils for a reason. They're chubby little hands and they aren't ready for that fine motor skills. Now, you might have some kids. I had one, at least, that fine motor skills were off the charts, and then one that did not have off the charts at all. And so it might also be that. It might be hard to hold a pencil. It might be hard to hold a crayon. And I know that there are people out there who are very pro holding off on giving your kids writing instruments until older. I mean, I don't know the exact age, but they don't think that like a 4, 5, 6-year-old should. They think that they need to be older. So you can go ahead and look into, I'm sure there's scientific evidence. You can go ahead and look into that, but maybe the resistance is because it's hard. But you could find ways of learning how to do it. I've seen people just get like a cookie sheet or a small pan. You put a bunch of rice in it or beans or sand. And I know right now you're like, wait, what? I don't really want sand in my house. Then go do it outside. Get some dirt, get some mud. And they'll practice just using their fingers for writing as opposed to actually using something like a crayon or a pencil to do that. Did I say pen earlier? Hopefully I did not say pen. If I did, scratch that. Pencil, most likely they're going to write with, and crayon for coloring and drawing. But there's other ways of doing handwriting practice, and maybe just hold off a little bit. Just step back. I promise. They will not be behind. They'll pick up on it, and just out of a desire to be able to most likely sometimes do what everybody else is doing and be able to write like the kids in their Sunday school class or to write like their big brother or big sister. And one last question. This one says, a just for fun question. In all your years of homeschooling, what was your most regretted purchase? I feel like there's so much to choose from now. Yes, there is. I thought I had a lot to choose from. You have a lot more. She goes on to say it's hard to avoid ending up with something you regret at some point. So I would say my most regretted purchase, my youngest, was the one that I had to teach how to read. And I didn't understand like language arts. I didn't understand the different components of language arts. I didn't understand teaching them to read. But I knew that phonics was probably the best way because that's what all the homeschool curriculum did. And my kids, my older two, learned by sight words. And I was like, I don't think this is quite right. So anyway, came down to the phonics. I purchased that first year for his kindergarten year because I was like, you have to learn how to read in kindergarten. I would no longer push that now. I have a little bit more perspective and a little bit more knowledge about that. But I purchased 3 different writing curriculums. I purchased Saxon. Might have been Saxon Phonics for kindergarten. I purchased All About Reading, not the whole set, maybe just like the first or second level. And then I also purchased How to Teach Your Child to Read in 100 Easy Lessons. All of those. And when I looked at it, I realized because I started doing all 3 of them. And I was like, wait a minute, this is kind of the same thing. They just have kind of different approaches. They're just teaching them how to read. And I ended up settling on the Saxon phonics. And I'm not throwing them under the bus or anything like that. It may work really well for some kids. It was just a lot for the one child that I needed to teach how to read. However, the other two would kind of listen in, especially my daughter would listen in and listen to the lessons I was giving him with his phonics. So it turned out okay because she was like, oh, is that why it's like that? Because she had learned by sight words and had not learned phonics. So she was able to pick up on a lot. But that program was pretty heavy and intensive. And the all about reading. So what I ended up doing was I ended up selling all of these programs afterwards. The other two I never used. If I could go back, I probably, knowing what I know now and knowing this child as well as I know him now, I would have done the 100 easy lessons. That probably would have been a better fit. So that, I would say, most regretted purchase. I mean, he learned how to read. We figured it out. He could read. He's 17. He's absolutely fine. But there is a lot. And I'm sure that there were other years that I purchased things and it was just, I think that would be the main thing, is I would purchase too much for a year. So I would say just focus on your math, your language arts, and then you can fit in other things. Nobody says you have to do history every single year. Nobody says you have to do science every single year. But just maybe pick those the main things, math and language arts, and then say, okay, what do we think we have time, or what do we want to focus on this year so that you don't get too much? And if you do purchase too much, just take it, put it aside. Sometimes it's best to put it in a closet so that so it's not staring at you every single day while you're doing lessons saying, why aren't you using me? You wasted your money. No, when you go to get your curriculum for the next homeschool year, first go and look at what you have and shop from there first. All right, that's all I have time for today. I promise to be back with a Q&A in a couple of weeks to answer those other questions. But if you want to get your question in for the next time, make sure you follow that link in the show notes. I hope you enjoyed these answers, and I hope that it was helpful to you. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. If it was just what you needed to hear, would you do me a favor and share it with a friend? And if you would like to connect more, social media links and more are in the show notes just for you. I promise to see you back here real soon.